Greetings from Fairmont, West Virginia here in Marion County. While here we'll see places such as Fairmont, Farmington, and Mannington. We'll also speak with Dora, Grubb, and Gena Wagaman of the Marion County Historical Society, and later Marianne Moran, Executive Director of the Marion County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they'll all give us a detailed account of some of Marion County's history, culture, and area attractions.
Fairmont after I graduated from college and left for 33 years, and then I came back. And when I came back, my mother got me interested in this, and I started learning about the history that I never learned about in school, which was a shame because Fairmont and Marion County was probably one of the most important sites around. It was a thriving community. And in the 1700s, it would have been considered big to what most places were. Of course, everybody knows that Morgan settled West Virginia, and many of the Morgans settled around here. David Morgan settled here. One of his homes is out here in Fairmont Farms, the original log cabin that was built in 1817 is still there, right in the middle of Fairmont Farms. He also still has a home down in Reevesville that's being restored, but he was probably one of the more prominent. And the Morgans, as you know, branched out all over. Boaz Fleming came here in the 1700s and settled here, and he bought the land from Morgan. And at this time, the county was divided, and half the county belonged to Montague County, and the other half belonged to Harrison County. So he was upset about having to pay taxes in both places. Well, gee, does that sound familiar? So he went down to Clarksburg, who Dolly Madison was visiting her cousin there. And after he complained a while, she said, if you don't like it, why don't you form your own county? So he spent about the next 30 years of his life doing that. And he went to, first thing you have to do is have a county seat. So he went around to all the towns. Reevesville was a very prominent there. And he asked Reevesville to be county seat. Nope, wasn't interested. They liked to belong to Montague County. So what he did was, he divided the county. He made his own town. And this was originally called Middletown. And he did half-acre plots, 86 half-acre plots, and named all the streets, lined it, had the town surveyed. We have the original surveying compass from 1740 here in the museum. There's only 6 of them to know be in existence in the world. And we have the signed map of where all of the town was laid out. And he named all of the streets after presidents. And so that's why we have Adams, Monroe, so the streets were named after political figures. He also donated money for a church, which would have been up here on where West Banco is now. And so he set about to form his town. Now, most people have the idea that it was called Middletown because it was between both, but that's not the truth. The true reason is that was where his wife was from Middletown, main Middletown. Now, you had Middletown, it was right here. Then across the bridge you had Palatine. That was a separate. And then you have then everybody that always asks is what is Pettyjohn, and Pettyjohn was the third. So all of these were eventually connected and became Fairmont. And that wasn't until about 1899, I believe. But we didn't actually become a separate county until 1842. So we claim we bought the land from one Indian tribe. I believe there were at least 5 or 6 that were found here. And every 5 miles there was a fort. So one of the forts was right down here where their little church is built on the foundation, one of the historic churches down here. Brickett's Fort was another site, but every 5 miles you would find a fort, because you never knew when you were going to become under Indian attack. And so they were all very close together. And at that time, George Washington and Hayman were very good friends, and probably the reason that they were good friends, they were ages 18 and 19, and they were both the same age, and they both served in the British military together, and they were both surveyors. So they had those 3 things in common to begin with. And when the war broke out, the Revolutionary War, which did take place here, when the Revolutionary War took place here, then George Washington assigned him to be the head of Brickett's Fort. Of course, many of the things that you read about, and they talk about being Virginia, were really West Virginia, because we didn't become a state until 1863. Probably one of the most important industries of all was coal mining, which originated here, true coal mining. The Watsons and the Hutchisons and the Pierponts were so influential in Washington that they managed to get the B&O Railroad that was going across the country to have a major railroad station right down there, so that they could transport coal, which had just been discovered for all of its uses. And so in 1854, they had a major railroad station so that they could transport the coal. We had, because of the clay and because of the coal, they had, and gas, they had, I think a total of about 40 different glass companies and pottery companies right here in what we now consider the Marion County area. One of the largest was the pottery, the Bowers Pottery in Mannington, and they made what you normally consider toilets or porcelain duty pots. When we talk about disasters, of course, we think mostly about the Monongahela disaster, though there were quite a few disasters throughout. There were 2 mines that were joined together, number 6 and number 8 mine, and they were joined together to do mining. Now, there was an explosion, and they heard from Monongahela, 20 miles away, felt the vibrations of this explosion. And the recorded is that there were 361 men that were killed in this explosion. But most people don't realize that the boy children started going into the mines at 8 and 9. And because you were paid by the piece, so they would pick up the piece and put it in that their fathers were doing. And so they do not know how many children were actually killed. And they filled over 500 body bags, though the recorded is 361 men. It started, one of the things that it did start was started some of the mine safety laws. And that has always been sort of a problem in mine working that continues into present day. The Farmington number 9 disaster, when that happened, I was 18 years old, and I went down to where they were waiting their vigil for the miners to come out. And that's it's an experience you don't want to have, and I can't imagine going through it with a loved one. The year after the Monongahela mine explosion, Mrs. Claypool felt that it was important to recognize fathers. And so she had the preacher give the first Father's Day service, first recorded Father's Day service in the nation. And that was 1 year later, July 5th, 1908, was the first Father's Day church. service, and we now call Central United Methodist Church the Father's Day Church. The sesquicentennial that is being observed nationwide, that is being held from 2011 to 2015. A lot of the attention is being given to the Civil War activities in here. And while we did not have a lot of battles here, what we did have is probably part of the most significant to the state of West Virginia was from Fairmont. And what that was the Pierpont connection. And Francis H. Pierpont, who resided here with his wife Julie Pierpont, when the war broke out and those Virginians deserted their post, they didn't know what to do, because half of Virginia was loyal to the Union, but the other half went with Lee and with Jefferson Davis, and they actually deserted their post. When they did that, they held a convention, and the first was here, and then the rest were in Wheeling. And Francis H. Pierpont was elected unanimously, 77 votes, was elected to be the governor of Virginia. Not West Virginia, but Virginia. And he really wasn't comfortable with this, because he felt he didn't like the separation of the state. But it had been brewing for a while, because Western Virginia felt they had been neglected anyway, because they were more industrialized. Like I said, the railroad went through in 1854, and also all these other industries started, while Southern Virginia was still more or less farming and into farming. So a lot of times, because we weren't represented fairly, and they yelled quite a bit about that. But anyway, Pierpont, Francis H. Pierpont, still were hoping of the reunification. Finally, he realized that it wasn't going to happen. It really wasn't going to happen. And he pled with his friend, Abraham Lincoln, to join us as a state. Now that isn't as easy as it seems, because you're supposed to have the whole state vote on becoming a state. And that was a question for a long time. Were we really a state? Because we didn't quite follow the policy. And there's still a little edginess around that. Some people say that, yeah, we're a state, but as far as following actually the things, and what's ironic, we were fighting a war because the southern states wanted to succeed, and then at the same time we're wanting to succeed too. But however, neither here nor there, he is actually the one that was instrumental in West Virginia becoming the state. And because of that, he is named the Father of West Virginia, and his statue stands in Statuary Hall as the Father of West Virginia. But Pierpont was not only important for that reason, he was important for a lot of other reasons. Now, slavery had divided the country, had divided, of course, families locally also, of whether or not. And actually, the original Central United Methodist Church was the Southern Methodist, and First Street Faith, or what you want to call it now, was Northern Methodist, even they were located together. Somebody says, why were there so many Methodist churches? Is because one of the reasons a lot of them split because of the Civil War. And that's one of the things that Governor Pierpont worked towards, the reunification of the Northern and Southern Methodist Church. And the first national conference for the Methodist Church was held down here at the church down around the corner that was called the Second Pierpont Church. Francis Pierpont was very much anti-slavery, and his wife was an abolitionist. But also another thing, that Virginia did not believe in free schooling, and so only the landed gentry could go to school. Francis Pierpont believed that everyone should attend school, and he felt that women, all nationalities, should attend school. So he started the first school for blacks, women, and people of all ages. And it was an integrated school in 1865, and it was started up here on the corner. He also started what was called Fairmont Normal School, which we now know as Fairmont State College University. He refused the governorship because in 1863 when we became a state, and he proceeded to continue to be the governor of restored Virginia. And then when the war ended in 1865, he moved on to Richmond, Virginia, and he was appointed there pretty much by Abraham, appointed there because he believed in the reunification of the North and the South, southern states, without punishment. In 1868, then, when he wasn't reelected, then he moved back to Fairmont and established. He was an attorney and had multiple businesses, and of course was a very wealthy man. His wife, in her own right, was a very important woman. First of all, she was highly educated. She was outspoken, and she spoke her mind. Absolutely, when the Confederates came through here and demanded to come and search for a man in her house up here, she would not let him in. Now, can you imagine that she saw several of the Confederate soldiers from entering her house? Now, that's kind of hard to believe, but it happened. And not only that, when she was down in Virginia in 1866, she was really upset about the condition of the graves of the Union soldiers because they were neglected. The grass had grown over it. A lot of them just had like staves in them and so forth. And her husband basically said, why don't you do something about it? Now, she had started a school for the blacks down in Richmond, too, to help them be educated, to have jobs with their freedom. And so her friend and her family, the school children, all went and cleaned up the graves and placed red, white, and blue flowers on the graves and so forth. And a lot of people give her credit, a lot of historians give her credit for the start of Memorial Day because what she did reached other places, and they started having it, but it was in Richmond, Virginia, at the Hollywood cemeteries, which is famous for the Civil War soldiers that are buried there. And so she is given credit for starting Decoration Day, which we now know as Memorial Day. As I said before, we really weren't known to have battles here. This was more or less a stronghold between the North and the South. We were sort of a border place. And so we all hear about Sherman's march to the sea, but we rarely hear about the Jones and Bowdoin raid to the north, which was basically the same thing. They traveled through 5 states, and the idea was that they were to destroy the railroads, they were to destroy the bridges, and when they came here, a third thing that they were to do was to kill Francis H. Pierpont. Now there's stories of just how many people came, but through here, because it was around between the two generals, 4,000 men that were coming. And they split. So it was probably more like 1,800 that came here. But you got to remember, you're talking about 4 blocks. And they're coming down over from east side through the river over here. And you're talking, if you have 1,800 men, that is quite a few people that's invading a place that's basically being protected by 87 people, 87 veterans. By this time they knew that they were in danger and they had already left. Francis Pierpont had gone to the temporary capital of Virginia in Wheeling, and his wife spent time between Pittsburgh and with her sister and friends. They pretty much deserted here. When they got there, they wanted to destroy the Pierpont house, which was right up here on the hill. Heaven knows that the Confederates didn't destroy it, but we managed to build a hex. When they got to the house, of course, nobody was left there. And so as they were going to burn the house, they said, "Oh no, don't do that." The other people came out because there were still Confederates living here too, because they said, "We'll be retaliated against if you do." And so far, nobody's burned our places or done anything else. So it's pretty much divided. And so the Pierponts had like an office library in the back. And so instead they took all the books out of there and threw them in a pile to burn them. And one of the Confederate soldiers pulled the family Bible out of there. Now why, we're not sure. Was it because of the religious significance of the Bible, or was it because that is how you kept all of your family records, and if you lost a family Bible, then you lost your records. You didn't have that you could go to the courthouse and get them. It was the family Bible. And he was ordered to throw it back in. Now where he hid it, we don't know, but it did survive and stay there. We are probably one of the oldest historical societies in the state, though I haven't done the research on that, but don't quote me. But it was founded in 1908 by Bernard Butcher, who was the state superintendent of schools. And he felt that there should be a historical society to preserve the past for the future. And also, practically every prominent person in Fairmont were active members, let me say, active members. You had Hartleys, you had the Flemings, you had everybody join it. And one of the more significant things that they did is there probably wouldn't have been a Prickett's Fort had there not been, because they are the actual ones that helped the fort get restored, brought in the buildings, took a lot of the artifacts to have them put up. They also were the first board for Prickett's Fort before it became independent. So that's, I think, one of the more major contributions. They also had a speaking bureau. They started trying to find a museum. You know, they procured this in 1986. They have back three books. This being one of them, which is a history of Marion County that was written in 1963. There's two others. There's a pictorial history of Marion County that they sponsor. Now our primary focus is to preserve the many artifacts that we do have, and we have some very valuable artifacts here. And we just recently received 2 grants. One grant that we received was to get a professional scanner. We have Dr. Dora from Fairmont State College and Dr. James Matthew, who are doing the scanning, putting them up on, we bought what is called Past Perfect. We have over 50,000 photographs dating back to the 1800s. And we also have documents dating back to the 1700s that all need to be scanned, put in digitally, and that the originals be put away and away from hands. We've been purchasing materials to do this while at the same time having it available for people to learn.
Woodlawn Cemetery was founded in 1885. Over the years it has expanded from its original 10 acres to today we have over 42.5 acres in size. We have 11,000 burials. We have a 500 crypt mausoleum. We are a National Historic District, and we have 2 contributing structures, the Woodlawn Abbey, which is our mausoleum, and the caretaker's residence, which is at the front gate. And we have many individuals of some historic note for the city of Fairmont, for the county of Marion, for the state of West Virginia. And we also have men who served in national capacity, such as Matthew Mansfield Neely, who over a 40-year period served as governor, congressman, and senator. We also have judges of note, such as J. Harper Meredith, for whom the county city building is named. We have the Haymans, 3 generations who were judges. We have Judge Shaw. We have a number of judges, a number of lawyers. We have some merchants of high repute, such as Joseph M. Hartley, who had the Hartley Department Store. Doctors, Dr. Brownfield, Dr. Ogden, Dr. Cook, Dr. Ramsey. And then, of course, we have coal barons, such as James Otis Watson and Clyde Hutchinson. And we also have coal miners. men who made their living by working in the coal mines. We have a few casualties from the Monongah disaster, and a couple of other mine accidents were buried here. We have, I tell folks we've got all these important folks, and then we just have folks. And these are the people who built Fairmont, who built Marion County, who built West Virginia. We're standing on the Hamilton farm, and just across the roadway is the Barnes farm. And we're here with Joseph Ritchie Hamilton, who was our first burial in what would become Woodlawn Cemetery. Joseph went out on an April day in 1875. He was about 14. He had with him a loaded rifle, and he was climbing the fence between his father's farm and the neighboring farm. The rifle accidentally discharged and killed him, and his father's decision to bury him where they found him marked the beginning of Woodlawn Cemetery. The families opened the fence line and enclosed a small area to use as a family burial ground. And over the years, people would ask to come and be buried in Woodlawn, which is what this area was known as. And so in 1885, men from the Barnes family and from the Hamilton family came together and created a corporation. They incorporated as a cemetery company, bought 5 acres from Mr. Barnes and 5 acres from Mr. Hamilton, sold shares and had stockholders, and started selling plots in the cemetery. And at that time, when you sold land to someone, you actually deeded them the land. So what we generally respond to when people ask us who owns the cemetery, we say the people who are buried here, they're heirs and assigns forever, because the property goes down in the family.
To have a wide range of activities for people to do. We have 2 state parks, Prickett's Fort and Valley Falls. Prickett's Fort operates a daily living history program. Their season runs from April through the end of October. Plus in December, they have an annual Christmas market. They have costumed interpreters on site every day showing how people lived back around 1774. Valley Falls State Park is a day-use park. It's over 1,100 acres, and a lot of people like to fish there. There are mountain biking and hiking trails. It is also a very popular wedding destination for outdoor weddings. Also for outdoor recreation, we have 3 rails to trail systems. We have the Mick Trail, and the trailhead for that is at Prickett's Fort. Prickett's Fort is also a trailhead for the Mon River Trail, which runs from Fairmont all the way north to the Pennsylvania state line. We also have the West Fork River Trail, which runs from Marion County into Harrison County. Our newest attraction is Heston Farms Winery and Distillery. They have a wide variety of wines and moonshine. And yes, folks, it is legal to buy that moonshine. Also, every weekend on Saturday nights, they have live entertainment. And they also operate food service, so you can have lunch or dinner. On the heritage side, we also have 3 museums. The Marion County Museum, located next to the courthouse in downtown Fairmont. The Telephone Museum, which also is in downtown Fairmont. And the West Augusta Historical Society Round Barn and separate museum in Mannington. So we have a lot of interesting things for people who are into heritage and history. And if you notice throughout our town, we also have quite a few Civil War markers designating areas where important Civil War battles took place. 3 biggest fairs and festivals are the West Virginia Three Rivers Festival, which is in May, the Mannington District Fair in August, and the Feast of the Seven Fishes Festival in December. The West Virginia Three Rivers Festival, they have a lot of children's activities, carnival rides, game booths, and live free entertainment. There is no admission charge to attend the festival. The Mannington District Fair is always the first full week in August. There is a gate fee, but they bring in top name entertainment, mostly country western, have a lot of agricultural exhibits, a huge carnival and food booths, things that you would expect at a fair. The one that I think is the most unique is the Feast of the Seven Fishes Festival. It's in December, and it celebrates the Italian tradition of Christmas Eve feast with 7 fishes. And also associated with it, they have a cooking school every year. And the recipes that they prepare and you get to taste are different every year. And it's always in December. It's normally the second Saturday of December, and it's in conjunction with the Christmas market at Prickett's Fort. So many people come into town to do both events on one day. The Convention and Visitors Bureau of Marion County has been in existence really since 1986, when the hotel motel tax law was passed. We're governed by a 12-member board of directors, and our main mission statement is to promote Marion County as a group tour, meeting, and vacation destination. We do that in many ways. We've operated a website since 1993, which is really updated daily. Our most visited page is, of course, our calendar of events. People may submit their own fairs and festivals and events easily online. There's a form for that. We produce an annual visitor's guide. We also do about $200,000 worth of advertising annually in print, newspaper, radio, television, internet ads, for all the different market segments that we have. We advertise our heritage attractions, our recreational opportunities, our state parks, and everything we have to offer. We recently, in fact February 6, 2012, moved into our brand new visitor center, which is located off of exit 136 of I-79. The road is referred to as the Gateway Connector. Many years ago, Congressman Alan Mollahan had a vision to build this Gateway Connector Road as an easy and beautiful access into downtown Fairmont, in the hopes to, again, revitalize downtown Fairmont and make it attractive for new businesses to move into. As you know, in the 70s, the malls became the place to shop. And so with the building of Middletown Mall, Meadowbrook Mall, Morgantown Mall, and malls across the nation, downtown suffered. And many businesses either A, went out of business, or B, moved into those malls. And so Fairmont's downtown was similar in that many of the stores moved away or closed. However, I'm pleased to say that over the last decade, other businesses have started to come in and are taking an interest in opening up shop in downtown Fairmont. And we believe, because of the connector, even more will do so. So it's a real positive for the county. I'd like to tell you a little bit of history about the actual visitor center and why Congressman Mollahan was interested in having this visitor center off of the connector. His father, Congressman Robert Mollahan, was involved in one of the last WPA projects in West Virginia, which was the former children's shelter. Some people referred to it as the orphanage home or the boys' home. Well, that structure, as I said, was built in '41, and we actually, on the cornerstone of this building, have the original stone that says 1941 in it. So his vision was to build a brand new building, but for it to look identical to the former children's shelter. So the contractors disassembled the stone piece by piece from the children's shelter and stored it on the Marion County Commission property until this building was erected, and put it back identical. If you look at pictures of the children's shelter and compare them stone by stone, window by window, to this structure, you could not tell the difference. A lot of people come into our office from out of state and they remark about how unusual and beautiful the structure is, and they ask, what's the story behind it? What was this originally? And we do have a plaque in our office that has pictures of the old facility and a brief history of this building. And it's really an amazing structure and a tribute, really, to history that we preserved it in this way. Since we moved into the building, we are averaging about 600 people a month coming through our doors, which is amazing, because previous to this in our other locations we were lucky to get 75 or 100. I think one of the main industries, so to speak, that has really helped Marion County as a whole is the high-tech industry. Congressman Moran was successful in having sort of an incubator starter place here, and a lot of high-tech jobs have come out of that. Also, Marion County has really seen a lot of growth as a direct result of the FBI facility in Harrison County. I know a lot of people that work there for the FBI and for the subcontractors live in Marion County and Mon County as well. Coal used to be king in our area as well as a lot of part of West Virginia, but now for this area at least, it's high-tech jobs.